The story opens with the protagonist's arrival at Echo Station, a remote and isolated research outpost where something has gone terribly wrong. From the very beginning, the atmosphere is thick with unease. There are no grand welcomes, no bustling crew, just a hollow silence and the faint hum of failing machinery. The station feels less like a place of scientific progress and more like a tomb, its corridors too quiet, its lighting too dim. The protagonist, an investigator, or perhaps a replacement crew member, is briefed on the situation, though the details are frustratingly vague. Several people have vanished without a trace. No distress calls, no signs of struggle, just empty rooms and abandoned workstations. The remaining crew members are on edge, their voices hushed, their eyes darting toward shadows as if expecting something to lunge from the darkness. Their explanations are fragmented, contradictory. Some claim to have heard whispers in empty hallways. Others insist they've seen figures that shouldn't be there. The station itself is in disarray. Not the kind caused by negligence, but the kind that suggests a rapid, panicked unraveling. Personal belongings are left mid-use, data logs are corrupted or erased, and in some places, the walls bear strange marks, not scratches, but something more unsettling, as if the structure itself has been subtly warped. This opening scene sets the tone for the entire story, a creeping, insidious horror that defies easy explanation. There are no monsters lunging from the vents, no blood-stained corridors, just absence, silence, and the growing certainty that whatever took the missing crew members is still here, watching, waiting. The genius of this introduction lies in what it doesn't show. The fear isn't in the grotesque, but in the unknown. The reader, like the protagonist, is left straining to hear what isn't there, to see what refuses to be seen. By the time the first real mystery presents itself, a distorted body, a flicker of movement just outside the frame of vision, the dread has already taken root. This is cosmic horror at its finest, not about gore or jump scares, but about the slow, suffocating realization that the universe is far stranger and more hostile than we ever suspected. And Echo Station is ground zero for whatever nightmare is unfolding. The protagonist's investigation begins with methodical precision, the kind of disciplined routine that suggests they are either a professional or someone clinging to procedure as a way to stave off the growing unease. They comb through the station's records, personal logs, security footage, environmental data, anything that might offer a clue to the disappearances. But the deeper they dig, the more the evidence seems to resist comprehension. The security footage is the first true crack in the illusion of order. Grainy, flickering images show the missing crew members in their final moments, but what they depict makes no sense. Some are seen speaking to empty air, their faces slack with confusion or twisted in sudden terror. Others walk briskly down corridors only to stop mid-stride, as if encountering an invisible barrier before stepping forward, and then simply not appearing in the next camera's frame. One sequence shows a scientist working calmly at a terminal before his head jerks up, his mouth opening in a silent scream, and then the feed cuts to static. When it resumes, the chair is empty. The personal logs are worse. They start normally, routine updates, minor grievances, but then, subtly, the tone shifts. Mentions of whispers in the walls, of figures glimpsed just beyond the edge of sight. One crew member writes, "I keep hearing my name when no one's there, but it doesn't sound like an echo. It sounds like something learning how to say it." Another log ends mid-sentence, the final entry nothing but a jagged line scrawled across the screen, as if the writer's hand had been violently jerked away. The protagonist tries to rationalize it, equipment malfunctions, psychological breakdowns from isolation, but the pieces refuse to fit. There's no pattern, no clear trigger for the disappearances. The only common thread is the station itself, its labyrinthine halls seeming to shift when no one's looking, its vents exhaling something thicker than air. And then there are the whispers. At first, the investigator dismisses them as the product of an overworked mind, the natural creaks and groans of an aging station. But they grow more distinct, more intentional. A murmur just below hearing, a voice that isn't quite a voice. Sometimes it sounds like words. Sometimes it sounds like screaming. By the time the protagonist finds the first body, they already know the truth. Whatever took the others is still here. And it's not done yet. This scene is a masterclass in mounting dread. There are no cheap scares, no sudden reveals, just the slow, inexorable erosion of certainty. The horror lies in the gaps, in the things the footage doesn't show and the logs don't explain. By the end, the reader, like the protagonist, is left with a single, chilling realization. Some questions don't have answers, and some things don't want to be found. The air inside the ventilation shaft is thick with the scent of stale metal and something else, something organic, cloying, just shy of rotten. The protagonist crawls forward, the beam of their flashlight cutting a narrow path through the darkness. They shouldn't be here. The maintenance tunnels are off limits without proper clearance, but the station's security protocols have long since collapsed, just like everything else. And then they see it. At first, it's just a shape, too still, too wrong, wedged between the ductwork and the wall. The body is curled into itself, limbs bent at angles that suggest a puppet with its strings cut, except no human body should fold like that. The skin is pale, almost waxy, stretched too tight over bones that seem to have shifted beneath. The face is frozen in an expression beyond fear, beyond pain, something closer to awe, as if in their final moments the victim saw something so vast, so incomprehensible, that it shattered them from the inside out. There are no wounds, no blood, no signs of struggle, just this grotesque sculpture of flesh, as if the very laws of anatomy had been rewritten as a cruel joke. The protagonist's breath catches. They've seen death before, accidents, malfunctions, the occasional violence that flares up in isolated places. But this is different. This isn't something a person could do. This isn't something that should be possible. A noise echoes through the shaft, a whisper or maybe just the groan of metal settling. The protagonist's grip on the flashlight tightens, the light wavers, and for a fraction of a second, the corpse's fingers seem to twitch. A trick of the shadows. It has to be. But then why does it feel like the thing is smiling at them? They back away, heart hammering, the weight of the station pressing in around them. The body isn't just a corpse, it's a message, a warning, and the worst part, they don't know what it's trying to say. This scene is where the horror shifts from unsettling to visceral. Up until now, the disappearances have been abstract, people gone without a trace, eerie footage, whispers in the dark. But the body is proof. Something is here. Something is hunting. And it doesn't just kill, it unmakes. The description of the corpse is key. It's not just mangled, it's rearranged, as if reality itself has been warped around it. This isn't the work of a monster with claws and teeth. This is something older, something hungrier, and it's just getting started. The protagonist's reaction, the dawning horror, the refusal to fully process what they're seeing, mirrors the reader's own. Because the truth is worse than death. Some doors, once opened, can't be closed. The interview room is too bright, the sterile lighting humming faintly against the silence. The surviving scientist, A gaunt man with hollow eyes who hasn't slept in days sits across from the protagonist, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the table. His answers are clipped, erratic. He keeps glancing at the corners of the room as if expecting something to step out of them. The protagonist presses for details. What happened to the others? Did they say anything before they disappeared? Were there any warnings? The scientist shakes his head, then stops. His breath hitches. They didn't say anything, he murmurs. But sometimes the air would get heavy right before, like something was listening. A pause. The lights flicker, just once. The scientist's eyes dart toward the door. The protagonist follows his gaze. Nothing there. When they turn back, the chair is empty. Not overturned, not dragged away. Empty. The scientist is simply gone. The air in the room is perfectly still. No gust of wind, no sound of footsteps, no disturbance at all. It's as if he never existed. The only trace left is the coffee cup he'd been holding, now lying on its side, a dark stain spreading across the table. The liquid hasn't even finished dripping. Then, soft, almost imperceptible, a whisper curls from the walls. Not a voice, not a language, just sound, shaped like a word. The protagonist's skin prickles. They reach for their recorder, checking the playback. The audio is clear up until the moment the scientist vanishes. Then, silence. Not static, not interference, just nothing, as if the machine itself refuses to acknowledge what just happened. They stand there, pulse racing, staring at the empty chair. The rules have changed. Before, people disappeared in the dark, in unseen moments. Now, it happens in plain sight. And the worst part, it could happen to them next. This scene is a masterstroke of psychological horror. The vanishing isn't dramatic. It's casual. The utter lack of fanfare makes it more terrifying. 1 second the man is there, the next he isn't, and the universe doesn't even bother to explain. The whisper, the untouched coffee cup, the unrecorded silence, they're all breadcrumbs leading to a truth the protagonist and the reader isn't sure they want to find. Because whatever's taking them isn't just hunting, it's showing off. The station's corridors stretch too long in the dim light, their walls breathing faintly with the pulse of failing machinery. The protagonist walks them alone now, their footsteps echoing like the last heartbeat of a dying thing. But they are not alone, not really. The air hums with something unseen, a presence that lingers just beyond perception, pressing against the edges of reality. At first, the hallucinations are subtle, a flicker of movement at the corner of the eye, a shadow that lingers a second too long before dissolving into the dark. The protagonist tells themselves it's fatigue, the strain of isolation, the mind's desperate attempt to fill the silence. But then the whispers start, not from the walls, not from the vents, from inside their own skull, as if something has slipped past the gates of perception and now murmurs directly into the folds of their brain. The voice is familiar, almost human, but wrong, the cadence too staggered, the pauses too deliberate, like a thing learning to speak by mimicking the dead. Then come the figures. They appear in flashes, a silhouette at the end of a hallway, its posture too stiff, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. A face pressed against the glass of a sealed door, its features blurred as if seen through water. Sometimes they look like the missing crew members, their mouths moving soundlessly, their eyes hollow and knowing. Other times they are nothing at all, just shapes, suggestions of limbs and torsos that twist and reform like smoke. The protagonist blinks, and they're gone. But the afterimage lingers, burned into the retina like a scar. The worst moment comes in the mess hall. The protagonist sits at a table, forcing themselves to eat, when the air grows thick, syrupy. The walls seem to pulse. And then, reflected in the polished metal of their tray, they see it, a figure standing behind them close enough to touch. Its face is a distortion, a funhouse mirror of human features stretched into something grotesque. The protagonist whirls around, nothing there. But the reflection had been real. Hadn't it? Reality frays at the edges. The line between hallucination and truth dissolves. The protagonist can no longer trust their own mind, and that is the true horror, not the fear of death, but the fear that they are already unraveling, that the station is peeling them apart layer by layer, and soon there will be nothing left to save. This scene is a descent into the surreal, where the greatest threat isn't the thing lurking in the dark. It's the slow, creeping realization that the dark has gotten inside you. The hallucinations are invasive, intimate, a violation of the self. By the end, the protagonist and the reader is left with a single paralyzing question. If your own mind betrays you, what's left to hold on to? The station's artificial lighting flickers with a slow, arrhythmic pulse, casting elongated shadows that seem to twitch when not directly observed. The protagonist moves through Echo Station's corridors like a ghost themselves now, their reflection in the polished steel walls appearing a half-second delayed, as if something else is learning to wear their face. The air smells faintly of ozone and something organic, like wet copper or spoiled meat, though the environmental systems show no contaminants. At first, the disturbances could be dismissed. A whisper that might have been static, a shadow that could have been fatigue. But then, the station begins breathing, not metaphorically, but in great shuddering exhalations that make the walls tremble. The protagonist places a palm against the cold metal and feels it, a deep, subterranean thrum that resonates in their molars. The vibration carries voices, not through the air, but through bone conduction, as if the sound is being injected directly into their nervous system. The hallucinations evolve with cruel precision. At 3:17 station time, the protagonist watches their own hands age 60 years in the mirror, skin withering to parchment before snapping back to normal. At 5:42, they enter the med bay to find every surface covered in a fine black mold that retreats when illuminated. By cycle 7, the missing crew members begin appearing in perfect fidelity, not as ghosts, but as fully corporeal beings who go about their routines, unaware they're supposed to be dead. The protagonist reaches out to touch Engineer Cho's shoulder, and their fingers pass through like smoke, while Cho continues typing as if nothing happened. The breaking point comes in the observation deck. The star field outside the viewport blinks out, not into darkness, into absence, a void so complete it seems to suck at the protagonist's retinas. Then the stars return, but wrong. They've rearranged into perfect spiral patterns, then humanoid silhouettes, then symbols that burn afterimages of screaming faces onto the protagonist's vision. When they stumble back, their boots splash in ankle-deep water that shouldn't exist, water that reflects not the deck above, but an infinite regression of decaying stations, each with a more grotesquely altered version of themselves looking up. The environmental alarms begin shrieking about a pressure breach that isn't happening. The protagonist's own voice plays back to them from the PA system, except it's speaking in a language of wet clicks and fractured vowels. When they vomit, the fluid that spills from their mouth moves against gravity, crawling up their uniform in branching, purposeful patterns. This is no longer hallucination. This is the station, or whatever has colonized it, editing reality itself. The protagonist's grip on sanity isn't slipping. It's being systematically dismantled. Every neurological safeguard, every cognitive anchor point is being unspooled to make room for something else. The true horror settles like lead in their chest. They're not hallucinating the impossible. They're beginning to see what's really there, and it sees them back. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.